and build on its promise to Canadian workers and its commitment to do to those people that equality for all Canadians that we've been doing since 2015.
Bravo.
The honour for Niagara Centre will have another 3 minutes for questions and comments when the House will resume debate on this motion. It is now statements by members.
Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise again today to speak to the Wet'suwet'en situation, the crisis that's gripping the country and about which this evening we will be in emergency debate. I think the most useful thing that I can do in 60 seconds is quote from a letter that appeared in the national newspapers from one of my constituents. You'll know him, Ron Wright, Massey lecturer, author of Short History of Progress. He notes in this letter that in writing his book Stolen Continents, he spoke of the Oka crisis, and he sees parallels. Like the Mohawks, the Wet'suwet'en have never lost their ancient sovereignty as an independent people. Under international law, there are only two ways to lose sovereignty, by armed conquest or by signing it away in treaty. Neither is the case here. Like the Mohawks, the Wet'suwet'en have an ancient system of self-government that predates European occupation and is still alive. Third, the elected band council set up under the Indian Act merely administer small territories defined as reserves. It's clear that the rule of law in this case is not muddied and only on one side. The Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs also stand with the rule of law.
The Honourable Member for Alfred Pellan. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to begin by wishing a happy birthday to my son, Gabriel, who's turning 6 years old today. Our work in this House is being done for you. This week, we are celebrating Perseverance in School, which emphasizes tenacity and hard work on the part of our students.
Learning environments or connecting youth with inspiring role models, we can all play a role in encouraging perseverance among the young people in our communities to help them reach their full potential.
I invite you all to actively participate in this societal challenge by recognizing good work and encouraging young people around you, because every gesture on our part helps them to succeed. That's what I did in primary schools in Pellan, where 5th and 6th year students who have stood out in one way or another will receive a certificate of recognition. Congratulations on your daily actions that contribute to your success.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I joined Canadians across the country in celebrating Family Day, and I want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to all families for their contribution as the bedrock of our society. I particularly want to thank the families who have members serving in this House who sacrifice much in allowing us to be here. I may be biased, but I'm convinced no one does a better job of this than my wife, Kyla, who's here today, along with our 3 children, Jacoby, Jada, and Kenzie. Mr. Speaker, I've had several retired MPs tell me that if at the end of your political career you no longer have your family at your side, you'll have gained nothing in your time in office. But if you leave with a strong, loving, and intact family, you'll have accomplished much. That's right. Kyla, our work here has just begun, but it's because of you that I have every confidence we'll accomplish much in the years to come. Thank you for being my rock. To every member, through the Speaker, if you'll allow me one word of advice, always put your family first. God bless.
The Honourable Member for Acadie-Bathurst. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to honour the memory of a great man. Guy Cormier was a fisher and mayor of the village of Saint-Léolin. Unfortunately, he died suddenly on January 11th. Mr. Cormier had 2 dreams: to become mayor and to find a new use for the empty Saint-Léolin school building. And in 2014, he was elected to the municipal council and became mayor in 2018. Thanks to his efforts, the former school became a highly successful hydroponic greenhouse. He was the friend of many people. He gave endless hours to various groups and causes and was a highly appreciated volunteer. He always had a faint smile on his lips and a good story to tell. He was a man who loved the world of politics, and he never hesitated in giving his advice or pushing his colleagues to do better and do more for our region. His death is a huge loss for the entire community. My most sincere condolences to his wife, Edwidge, and to his daughter, Nancy, and to his family and friends. Guy, we will miss you, And thank you for all your contributions to Acadie Bathurst. The Honourable Member for Longueuil-Saint-Hubert. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Saturday was a day of mourning for Quebec. On February 15th, 1839, 5 Quebec heroes, 5 patriots, were hung at the prison of Pied-du-Courant. They were executed for having stood up for their nation's freedom. François Marie-Thomas Chevalier de Lorimier, Charles Hindeleng.
Rémi Narbonne, Amable Daunet, et François Nicolas.
They all lost their lives in the name of justice and in the name of democracy. Their voices were stilled so that the voices of all Quebec women and men could be heard. Chevalier de Lorimier, the night before his execution, wrote, "Despite so much misfortune, my heart still has courage and hope for the future. My friends and my children will see better days. They will become free. Long live freedom. Long live independence." The Honourable Member for Orléans. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday, the community of Orleans that I have the privilege of representing joined with me in celebrating Family Day along with all Ontarians by going bowling with me.
To see such a great turnout, as nearly 500 joined me at the Orleans Bowling Center to play with their friends and their family. It always gives me great joy to see 2 and 3 generations taking the time to share an activity together. Ce genre d'activité communautaire.
This kind of community activity that we as elected representatives can organize often allows entire families to participate in recreational activities that otherwise would be too expensive for them.
So I want to say thank you to Kevin, Jonathan, and HoC from the Orleans Bowling Center who made sure the event ran smoothly. They have been extraordinary partners, and I thank them very much. And thank you to Orleans to have showed up for Bowling Day. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Number 4, Stevenson, Richmond East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to acknowledge the passing of an exceptional Canadian, Dr. John Spencer MacDonald. Dr. MacDonald was a graduate and esteemed professor of engineering at both UBC and MIT, who went on to receive office in the Order of Canada. He was also the co-founder of MacDonald, Detweiler & Associates, a high-tech company headquartered in Steveston, Richmond East, better known to Canadians as the company of Canadarm and constellation of RADARSAT Earth observation satellites. I was an employee of MDA for many years. It is from this experience that I say MDA under Dr. MacDonald's visions and leadership was the incubator of many professionals within Canada's technology sector, a source of pride for Canadians' economy. I know what a difficult loss this will be for many within the MDA family. Not only will Dr. MacDonald be missed for his engineering genius, but because he was known as an exceptional individual and a visionary. His death will leave a void in the lives of all those whom he imparted wisdom on during his life. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Oakville North, Burlington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On February the 15th, 1965, our national flag was raised for the first time on Parliament Hill. In 1996, February 15th was officially designated National Flag of Canada Day, thanks in large part to the advocacy of former MP for Parkdale High Park and now Oakville North Burlington resident Jesse Fliss. Last Saturday, we celebrated our Flag Day from coast to coast to coast. At the official ceremony inaugurating the new Canadian flag in 1965, Honourable Maurice Bourget, Speaker of the Senate, said, and I quote, "The flag is the symbol of the nation's unity, for it, beyond any doubt, represents all the citizens of Canada without distinction of race, language, belief, or opinion," end quote. Residents are invited to drop into my community office and pick up a paper flag poster they can display to honor and show our pride in being a beacon of strength, fairness, and freedom around the world.
Bravo. Way to go. The Honourable Member for Burnaby North, Seymour.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to congratulate Dr. Joy Johnson, who has been named the next president of Simon Fraser University. Throughout her career, Joy has done extensive work in gender and health studies and has worked on groundbreaking issues including diversity in hiring process and creating a culture of innovation. Her appointment also means that in September, we'll see the departure of our current president, Andrew Petter. I have been incredibly fortunate to work with Andrew on a number of files during the last decade. He has set a vision for an engaged university that would meet the needs not only of our community, but of Canada and of the world. He has championed entrepreneurship education and has significantly grown all of SFU's campuses in significant and meaningful ways. Andrew has left an incredible legacy on the SFU community, and I want to thank him for his service. Nous sommes fiers du travail exceptionnel accompli.
We will be so pleased to see this work to develop and give a positive impact in the future.
For Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, while exposing the evils of slavery, William Wilberforce said, "You may choose to look away, but you can never say again that you did not know." We here know well the horrors inflicted by the Iranian regime, horrors most experienced by the people of Iran, but seen and felt by many Canadians after the downing of Flight 752. We have seen the photos of parents and children whose lives were cut short. We have felt with them the crushing loss and pain. Some may choose to look the other way, but we may never again say that we did not know. In the midst of feeling this pain, Canadians and Iranians saw the images of our Prime Minister grinning, hugging, bowing, and shaking blood-stained hands during an interaction with the Iranian Foreign Minister. Did our Prime Minister know how this portrayal of obsequiousness and ease would be used by the regime and could impact its victims? After attending memorials and meetings with victims across this country, either he did not know or he did not care. Mr. Speaker, Canada has a choice to make. We either embrace the regime or we stand with its victims. We cannot do both.
The honourable member for Mississauga East Cooksville.
Speaker, today I'd like to talk about a program that is well appreciated in my riding of Mississauga East Cooksville, the Canada Summer Jobs Program. It's rolling out 70,000 jobs for our youth. In 2019, employers and youth satisfaction levels with this program were very high, and I'm encouraging employers and youth of Mississauga East and across Canada to effectively utilize this program's tremendous opportunities. By encouraging our youth into these high-quality jobs, Mr. Speaker, we're helping youth that are particularly those facing barriers to employment, employers of 50 or less employees, and our communities. A summer job is an important way to earn money while gaining valuable work experience, and will help our youth on the road to a successful career. In my riding, hundreds of employers and youth have benefited by taking part every year, and I encourage employers to come forward with their applications during the employer application period that is now open until February 24th. Let's help our youth build our future workforce. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Battleford Lloydminster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has stood in this place on occasion after occasion and stated that Canadians would be better off under his Liberal carbon tax. Well, the reality of the Liberal carbon tax is setting in, and the Prime Minister would be hard-pressed to find someone in my riding who is better off. Simply put, this assertion fails to acknowledge the basic realities of living in rural Saskatchewan. And my constituents deserve better from this government. The cost of everything is going up, and they are feeling the squeeze. None more so than our farmers and our agricultural producers. From grain drying to hauling crops to rail transportation and other major farm expenses, their bottom lines and their ability to compete are taking a direct hit. Mr. Speaker, it is time that the Prime Minister abandons his carbon tax scheme that unfairly punishes rural Canadians and agricultural producers and deliver a real plan for the environment.
Here, here, here. The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Professional protesters and well-funded NGOs have seized the opportunity to divide Indigenous communities and threaten their chance for financial prosperity. The very fundamentals of our country, our unity, our security, and our economic well-being are under attack. And where is the Prime Minister while this is happening? Well, he's been traipsing around the world trying to get us a seat on the UN's Security Council. And as if his absence didn't already send a message loud and clear that he really doesn't care, he took it one step further. While in the Republic of Senegal, he was discussing the attractive growth potential of their oil and gas sector. That's right, our Prime Minister is in another country in West Africa advocating for them and his vanity project while ignoring what's going on in his own country. This is not leadership. We on this side of the House call upon the Prime Minister to take seriously the responsibilities that have been entrusted to him as the Prime Minister of this country. We ask that he would make sure that the rule of law is upheld and that we as a country would enjoy a united, strong, free and prosperous future.
The honourable member for Nunavut.
What we are seeing across this country is not just about one resource project. This is about generations of underfunding, broken promises, and broken treaties. The federal government has backed Indigenous peoples into a corner. Food, water, safe housing, and infrastructure. These are the fundamental human rights that the federal government has promised us and continues to deny us. The anger around Wet'suwet'en territories is about the failed policies that have let Indigenous peoples down. The federal government has ignored or threatened our well-being and our very existence as Indigenous peoples. How can we talk about reconciliation when the federal government has stolen our lands, slaughtered our sled dogs, refuses us our rights, and continues to give us impossible choices? The situation is complex, but here's a simple start. The RCMP needs to stand down, and the Prime Minister needs to get involved and meet with hereditary chiefs.
The honourable member for Pierre Boucher, Les Patriotes, Verchères. No, I'm sorry.
M'excuse, j'ai une liste ici qui n'est pas... L'honorable député.
The honourable member. Mr. Speaker, Drummond is in mourning. Friday night, a road accident tore a deeply loved man from his loved ones and from an entire community. Lieutenant Mathieu Giroir, 44 years old, had been a firefighter in Drummondville for 18 years. Mathieu was also an amazing father of 5 children, a true family man. Mathieu was also very involved in his community. He was a firefighter for good reason. He was the personification of the values of that profession, up there with the best of them. Friday night, Valentine's Day, Mathieu and his wife Karine were driving in their car to Saint-Célestin when a drunk driver hit them, killing Mathieu and seriously injuring Karine, who is in hospital as we speak. I'd like to offer in this House our sincere condolences to the family of Lieutenant Mathieu Giroir. He was firefighter badge number 630. And I wish strength and peace to his children, his family over the next few days, especially to his wife Karine, who is recovering from her injuries. We have a tightly knit community in Drummondville, and you will be supported in these difficult times. Mr. Speaker, Drummondville lost a hero.
The honourable member for Thornhill.
Mr. Speaker, over the generations, Canadians have been served by many great journalists, eloquent chroniclers reporting from city halls, cop shops and courtrooms, locker rooms, rinks, sports fields, battlefields, sites of disaster and human tragedy. Christy Blatchford reported and opined from all those places over almost a half-century, but she was like none before. Her news-gathering skills ranged from gritty to compassionate. She inspired colleagues and rivals. She challenged conformity and authority and very often her editors. But as a former editor remembered last week, she made every newsroom better. Christy won more awards for her work than time allows to list. When she was inducted into the Canadian News Hall of Fame, she told a colleague, "I care about stories that tell us why the system matters, why things are worth protecting, why the rule of law is important." Mr. Speaker, it's an honor today to remember a journo's journo, a truly great comedian.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Hochelaga. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We all know that education is an invaluable resource in the lives of children. Historically, the neighbourhood of Hochelaga-Maisonneuve has been one of the most affected neighbourhoods in terms of school dropout rates. 33.4% of primary students have a disability or special educational needs, and 2/3 of primary and secondary school students are from immigrant families. I'd like to commend the neighbourhood of Hochelaga-Maisonneuve for its work in encouraging perseverance in school over the past 10 years. Thank you to the members of Chantier Promotion and Valorisation de la Persévérance Scolaire for their support for Hooked on School Days. Success in school relies on the daily efforts of teams and organizations that care about the needs of children and teenagers. Gestures as simple as an encouraging word or congratulations on a job well done are what we can do to encourage success. Perseverance is more than simply school performance. Thank you.
Question orale. Oral questions. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it is almost 4,400 kilometres from the Wet'suwet'en territory to the protesters in Ontario. And the Prime Minister this morning spoke of dialogue with the people who are breaking the law. Does the Prime Minister think that these protesters have more to say about what is in the best interests of the Wet'suwet'en First Nations, including those elected councillors who want jobs for their kids and their grandkids and who support the Coastal Link gas project?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Earlier this afternoon, I was pleased to sit down with three parliamentary leaders to talk and discuss concretely about the approach we're taking to constructive dialogue, to resolving this situation, not just peacefully, but for the long term. The leader of the official opposition, the leader of the Conservatives, excluded himself from this conversation with his unacceptable approach to not constructive dialogue, but falling into an approach that would hurt the very people he supposes he wants to help.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, dialogue is not going to pay the bills for people who are facing layoffs because of people breaking the law who have no connection to the Wet'suwet'en First Nation. He is elevating people who have no connection, people who constantly protest and try to blockade energy projects to the same level of those Indigenous Canadians who have been working hard for reconciliation in this country. And that is shameful, Mr. Speaker. So, simple question. On what day will these illegal blockades be taken down?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party of Canada continues to demonstrate that it does not understand that the path forward is concrete actions in reconciliation, in dialogue.
Okay, the heckling is getting a little out of hand, and name-calling that was on this morning, it's not something that's parliamentary, and I don't think we want to see it during our question period. I'll just point that out to anyone who's thinking of maybe calling names again. Thank you. The Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we need a long-term constructive solution. The short-term forceful approaches proposed by the Conservatives would end up harming the very farmers, small business owners and workers across this country with their heavy-handed approach that would plunge the country into long-term chaos. We will exhaust every action possible to resolve this situation peacefully and rapidly.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, what the Prime Minister seems to be talking about today is action if necessary, but not necessarily action. Does he not understand that the Wet'suwet'en First Nations support this project? The elected band councillors support this project. The majority of the hereditary chiefs even support this project. So when he talks about dialogue and moving forward and a path, does he not realize that he has an obligation to stand up and defend the interests of the Wet'suwet'en First Nations and their support for this project?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, as Prime Minister, I have an obligation to stand up for Canadians, and that's exactly what I'm doing. We are engaged in actions that will lead to a long-term resolution of these issues in partnership and respect, because that is how we ensure that for farmers, for workers, for small business owners, over the coming months and years, they can rely on our transportation system, because we will not have engaged in the kind of short-term forceful actions that the Conservatives are proposing.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Who is he talking about sitting down with in partnership, Mr. Speaker? These people in Ontario are ignoring the demands of the Wet'suwet'en First Nations. They are using them as an excuse to protest and block projects that they have always been opposed to, Mr. Speaker. So once again, why is the Prime Minister elevating people, activists who have no connection to the First Nations that we're talking about, elevating them on the same level as hardworking and well-meaning Indigenous leaders who are actually interested in reconciliation in this country?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've seen this approach from the Conservatives through 10 years of Stephen Harper that didn't get projects built because they believed in picking and choosing who spoke for whom. They believe in picking and choosing how to engage and characterizing anyone who disagreed with them as their opposition or as enemies of the national interest. That is not the approach we have. We will stay grounded in actions of respect and move forward constructively to help Canadians right across the country for the coming years.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. This Prime Minister is talking about picking and choosing who speaks for First Nations communities. Let's talk about who speaks for the Wet'suwet'en First Nation, the elected band councillors, the majority of the hereditary chiefs, and the people living in these communities who realize that the only way to have the same quality of life as every single other Canadian is to have these kinds of partnerships with natural resource corporations and the jobs that they create, Mr. Speaker. So once again, who is the Prime Minister thinking that he's going to sit down across the table from? The people who are breaking the law and who have no representation for the people that are affected by this project, Mr. Speaker. Right Honourable Prime Minister.
5 years ago, Canadians made a clear choice to support parties who were committed to reconciliation. Unfortunately,
Can we proceed? Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Get an answer then instead of...
The Conservative Party of Canada continues to demonstrate that it willfully and deliberately tries to misunderstand the reality of reconciliation in this country, and that is why they were excluded from a constructive conversation on how to move forward as a country on the path of reconciliation to support all Canadians from coast to coast to coast in their economic livelihoods and in their sense of what this country is.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, I'm concerned that Quebec's and Canada's international image is one that where there is a opposition between oil and Indigenous people, but we need to express things in clearer terms. The Prime Minister invited people to a meeting. The tone was not too aggressive, but I wonder if the Prime Minister could give us some indication of the timeline to move things forward so that people can see that there's progress towards removing the barricades. The Honourable Prime Minister. I'd like to thank the leader of the Bloc Québécois for his question and his cooperation. We recognize that the first step and the next steps have to involve constructive dialogue and concrete steps with the Wet'suwet'en so that we can find some solutions and create the process we need. We are willing to meet the Wet'suwet'en at any point to discuss a process that will resolve this challenge, and that will be the key to getting the demonstrations to come to an end all across the country. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. The First Nations are nations, as Quebecers form a nation and Canadians form a nation, and this is the type of relationship that needs to be constructed. And all the leaders who are interested and respectful should be involved. Would the Prime Minister agree to regular meetings, such as the one this morning, because this whole Parliament has to answer to all First Nations? The Honourable Prime Minister. I'd like to thank the member for his question. Yes, I'm very open to ensuring that all parties in this House who want to work constructively could be regularly informed of our approaches and strategies. It might not be with the Prime Minister himself all the time, but ministers will be involved. And we will engage with all members from all parties who are interested in that type of dialogue to make sure that we continue to work together beyond political stripes on this major challenge and to advance with reconciliation and help all Canadians succeed.
Burnaby South.
Mr. Speaker. We've asked this question before and not received a response, but after today's speech,
it seems like the Prime Minister recognizes that there is a federal role to be played in rectifying and solving this crisis. When will the Liberal government commit to meeting with the hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en territories?
We've asked this question repeatedly, but it seemed to me all along that the government wasn't recognizing that it had a role to play. So my question is, when will the Liberal government meet with the hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en territory? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, with respect to the pipeline issue, the coastal gas issue, clearly that's an issue that BC is concerned about, but clearly the question of Indigenous rights and Wet'suwet'en rights involves the federal government deeply as well. And that is why we will meet with the hereditary chiefs whenever they want to, whenever they can. We wanted to meet them yesterday. We will meet with them yesterday if possible. We're there to engage directly with them in direct consultation with the Wet'suwet'en.
For Burnaby South.
Merci.
Thank you. But we need concrete action now.
That the Ministry of Indigenous Services doesn't keep accurate details, doesn't know how many Indigenous kids are being taken from their families or how many are actually in care. These are kids we're talking about, and the federal government is not keeping accurate records about where these kids are. Now, if this government is not keeping these accurate records, then this amounts to a systemic negligence of these kids. My question is, will the Liberal government commit to protecting Indigenous kids and keeping accurate records of where these kids are being cared for?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as we well know, the question of child and family services is something that involves deeply the provinces across the country. And we have moved forward on legislation that restores the support to Indigenous communities for their kids to those Indigenous communities. That is something that we've made historical movements on. We will continue to work with Indigenous communities. We will continue to hold certain provinces that are resistant to this to account. We will ensure that no child in Canada gets raised far from their language, far from their community, far from their identity. That is a building block of success that everyone deserves to have.
Member for Portage-Lister.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Transport Minister issued a statement saying that tampering with rail lines, rail cars, or signaling systems is illegal and extremely dangerous. Now, Mr. Speaker, if rail lines are being tampered with, the consequences could be deadly. Canadians deserve to know what's happening, and they deserve to be protected. If the minister is indeed aware of rail lines being tampered with, then why is he and his government doing absolutely nothing to stop this illegal activity and these illegal blockades?
The Honourable Minister of Transport.
I thank my colleague for bringing up this very, very important subject. Indeed, I am concerned by the fact that some people are going near rail lines, on rail lines, or in rail yards, and doing things that are potentially dangerous, in addition to the fact that we have had some indications of tampering on the rail lines, which is not only dangerous, but is also a criminal activity and can affect not only those people, but those that might be affected by it. So I would urge Canadians, and we are trying to pursue this to find out where it comes from, but I would urge Canadians to be safe near railroads.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, this is a serious situation. As the minister acknowledged, illegal activity is going on. So either the rule of law applies in Canada or it doesn't, and we have anarchy. So again, Mr. Speaker, I will ask this minister, if he is aware that illegal activity is going on, tampering with rail lines and other illegal activity, why are they just giving Canadians words and word salad, as the Prime Minister is so good at delivering, instead of delivering real action to protect Canadians from these illegal blockades?
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, let me explain it to my colleague. When an activity of tampering occurs and we detect it, we try to follow up because this is a criminal activity. We need to have clues clues and we need to have evidence in order to find out who is the perpetrator. That is what we are doing. That's called detective work, if you like, and that is what we are doing. Thank you.
The honourable member for Charlesbourg au Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, it took the Prime Minister 13 days to finally grasp the scope of the crisis affecting the whole country. Demonstrators are illegally blockading rail lines all over the country with disastrous consequences for our security and our economy. We know that the Minister of Public Safety can give orders to the RCMP. When is he going to do it? The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
The very last thing that this very difficult situation requires is politicians trying to score political points by pretending that governments can instruct the police on how to do their job. And Mr. Speaker,
I'm having a hard time hearing the minister's answer. I'm sure the person who asked the question is having an equally as difficult time. We'll ask the Honourable Minister to continue.
Mr. Speaker, the concept of police independence requires that police officers be free from political direction or influence in carrying out law enforcement functions and making operational decisions. And Mr. Speaker, as the Supreme Court of Canada has said, police independence underpins the rule of law and is necessary for the maintenance of public order and the preservation of the peace.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent.
Canadians are asking, is politician taking action, not words like he's doing right now?
Mr. Speaker, what we have here is a government that is turning its back on situations. Last week, the Prime Minister didn't say anything, and the Minister said, we can't do anything. It's up to the provinces to enforce the law. What we're calling for today is for the government to enforce the law. That's what's disappointing Canadians. Canadians want a government that takes action and positive action for Canada's future. Why won't the government enforce the law? The Honourable Minister of Transport. I should correct my colleague. The federal government knows it has a role to play, and it's a very important role. On the specific question about an injunction, we have to respect the provincial police authority to enforce or not, or how to enforce an injunction. But we do still have an important role to play federally, and that is why we're working with our provincial counterparts to resolve this problem.
Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Well, while the Prime Minister was off whining and dining African dictators and kowtowing to Iranian despots, anti-energy activists were busy derailing the Canadian economy here at home. It's been nearly 2 weeks, and the Prime Minister has done nothing to ensure Canadians that the rule of law will be upheld, and his own anti-energy rhetoric has given courage to those who are willing to defy the courts with their illegal blockades. Does the Prime Minister agree that these blockades are illegal? And if so, when is he finally going to do something about it?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, as I've already indicated, it is not the role of government to give instructions to the commander of the RCMP. But let me share with you the RCMP's procedure for dealing with this. The RCMP operating manual for dealing with Aboriginal demonstrations says very clearly that their responsibility is to preserve the peace, to protect life and property, and to uphold the law. In every enforcement action shall be measured, incremental, and non-confrontational as possible, and that they shall always try to negotiate the conflict before taking enforcement action.
For Chilliwack Hope.
The Prime Minister's empty words have done nothing to de-escalate the situation. In fact, these protesters have been emboldened by his lack of meaningful action. This morning, a group of extremists in British Columbia attempted to carry out a, quote, citizen's arrest on Premier John Horgan in his home. This is happening in Canada under this Prime Minister's watch. Will the Prime Minister realize that appeasement is no longer an option and finally make it clear that the rule of law will be upheld and enforced in this country?
Mr. Speaker, I'm always shocked when someone invokes the rule of law and then chooses to ignore it. The Supreme Court of Canada has been very explicit about this. Police independence underpins the rule of law. It is necessary for the maintenance of public order and the preservation of the police. Mr. Speaker, the police in this case are following their training, their procedures. They're working diligently to resolve this matter peaceably, and they have our confidence.
The honourable member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, the railway blockades are holding the public hostage. In my riding, 3,000 people can't get to work. I contacted the Minister for Indigenous Relations, no answer. I contacted the Minister for Indigenous Services, no answer. Finally, I got an email that said I should contact the Minister of Transport. Then I heard him saying it's up to the provinces. I know the Prime Minister was in Africa, but where is the Deputy Prime Minister? My question is simple. Who is going to answer to the concerns of my constituents? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, we are extremely concerned by the facts of these blockades for those who depend on light rail for their commute, and also those who depend on the trains to transport cargo. So we know how important this is. We want to resolve it urgently, and we've said so from the beginning. We are going to do this through dialogue. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the First Nations expect to have a nation-to-nation relationship with this government, but that takes leadership. You need to have parties who are willing to come to the table. When the crisis broke, the Prime Minister was in Africa, Mr. Speaker. It seems he took the Minister for Crown Indigenous Relations with him, since we didn't hear a peep from her last week. The Minister took the anger of First Nations lightly. What is she doing now to restore dialogue?
The Honourable Minister.
Our government is of the view that dialogue is the best way and the most appropriate way to handle these issues. We are committed to restoring dialogue with First Nations, and this relationship will be based on recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership. We recognize that this is a difficult period, and that is why, in cooperation with the BC government, we have sent a joint letter to the hereditary chiefs of the Wet'suwet'en inviting them to a meeting as soon as possible.
Fort Saskatchewan.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians were horrified to see the Prime Minister grinning, hugging, and bowing during his interaction with the Iranian Foreign Minister, providing the regime a major propaganda victory and re-victimizing families whose loved ones it killed. Incredible. Could the Prime Minister update this House as to whether this servile display led to any concrete progress on compensation for Flight 752 victims' families or on a proper independent investigation? Good question.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
The Prime Minister was very clear, very firm with the Iranian Foreign Minister. He made a promise to families in Canada that we will do everything we can to make sure that they get full disclosure, accountability, transparency, and justice. Equally in Munich, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and our allies sent a strong message. Iran.
I just want to interrupt the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. There's quite a bit of shouting while he's trying to answer. I'm sure there's one or two voices. I don't want to have to point them out, but they know who they are. But they've got their voices carry very well, and I'm sure they wouldn't want to be pointed out. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary, please.
Simply repeat, our Prime Minister has taken every opportunity and was extremely clear and always firm with Iranian officials, the Iranian Prime Minister, the Foreign Minister. He made a promise to families in Canada that we will do everything in our power to make sure they get closure, accountability, transparency, and justice.
Honourable Member for Selkirk, Interlake, Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, when former Prime Minister Stephen Harper met with Vladimir Putin, he said, "Get out of Ukraine." That's right. Now that's real leadership. The Iranian community and the families of the victims of Flight 752 deserve that kind of leadership. Instead, they got the insulting spectacle of this Prime Minister glad-handing, backbeating, and of course, Paris bowing to the Iranian foreign minister and their chief propagandist. Will the Prime Minister apologize to the families and the Iranian community for this blatant disrespect, and will he say sorry for once again embarrassing Canada on the world stage?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, now more than ever, as families grieve, as families try to make sense of this situation, it's important for us to be united in this House and in Canada, and for Canadians to stand in the wake of this terrible tragedy. I would ask my colleagues on all sides of this House to avoid trying to score political points on this very important and deeply personal issue to many Canadians. We've brought together Canadians and international partners to hold Iran to account. We will do that, and we expect you to help us with it.
The Honourable Member for Aurora Oak Ridges at Richmond Hill.
At the Munich Security Conference last week, our closest ally, the United States, once again emphasized that reduced American intelligence cooperation would be the consequence for countries considering letting Huawei build next-generation telecommunications networks. Canada depends on U.S. intelligence sharing. Is this Prime Minister prepared to compromise Canada's national security and NORAD intelligence sharing by approving Huawei?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On every issue, we use an evidence-based approach. We ensure that we take into account our allies' positions, which are not unanimous, and we will continue the discussions around the Huawei decision and do it thoroughly, carefully, and expeditiously. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Well, the theme of this year's Munich Security Conference was Westlessness, highlighting a more divided and uncompetitive NATO alliance. In response, France advocates for a Europe-first approach to security, arguing that Europeans need to preserve their own sovereignty in a world dominated by an increasingly nationalist United States and an ambitious Russia. On this side of the Atlantic, Canada needs allies. But with Europe turning inward, Canada has never been more alone. How is this Prime Minister protecting Canada's sovereignty when no one has our back?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, our foreign policy is based on renewing a rules-based international order that Canadians have built together, protecting universal human rights, supporting democracies. We're a leader in the world on critical issues, whether it's in Venezuela, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's in China, all around the world. We will continue to stand with our allies, with NATO partners, as we continue to ensure that Canada's leadership is strong and heard in our world, with allies and like-minded who work with us.
Bravo. The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, this government uses the concept of the rule of law when it comes to helping their corporate friends build development projects without the free, prior and informed consent of Indigenous peoples. But we can all agree that upholding the Constitution, which includes Section 35 Aboriginal title and treaty rights, require the free, prior and informed consent of Indigenous peoples prior to developing, is the rule of law. Mr. Speaker, why does the Prime Minister have a double standard when applying the rule of law in this country?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I was honoured to receive in my mandate letter something that pertains precisely to the Honourable Member's question. That is the implementation of UNDRIP into Canadian law. We plan to implement this declaration, Mr. Speaker, by the end of 2020, and we will be engaging with Canadians and working in partnership with Indigenous peoples to implement the framework that will, in part, be the answer to her question.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Well, Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs defended their rights in land, and while solidarity protests sprang up across the country, the Prime Minister was off globetrotting and taking selfies. But the crisis is here. Today, leaders from the Assembly of First Nations proposed realistic and reasonable solutions. They have a plan to get out of the crisis. Since the Prime Minister clearly has no plan, will he accept the AFN's plan? Will he take this opportunity to meet with the hereditary chiefs and to move toward true reconciliation? The Honourable Minister. Our government feels that de-escalation and negotiation is necessary. We have been talking to hereditary chiefs, and I have also spoken to Chief Was on Sunday. I want to reaffirm our government's commitment to joint reconciliation with the Wet'suwet'en chiefs and with the province of BC. This commitment was confirmed in the joint letter sent by our government and the government of BC. We are open and available to talking.
For Niagara Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, last week in Niagara Centre, I was proud to share more great news about the Canadian economy with my constituents. 35,000 new jobs, Mr. Speaker. In just the first 31 days of 2020, that is an incredible accomplishment by our Canadian folk. A credit to all business. Fantastic news for Canada's workers, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister of Labour tell us some of what she'll be doing to continue making Canada a place to build a business and support Canada's workers?
Very good. Well, Minister of Labour.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague from Niagara Centre for that question. February 7th was indeed another great day. Our government is and remains committed to Canada's workers. We've repealed unfair labour targeting legislation, introduced protections to address workplace violence and harassment, and introduced more flexible work arrangements. Our plan for the future, Mr. Speaker, a $15 federal minimum wage, implementing the Pay Equity Act, and modernizing labour protections. We remain committed to Canada's workers.
Impressive.
Honorable Député.
Honourable Member for Richmond Athabasca. Mr. Speaker, 43 Canadians have been affected by COVID-19 in Japan, including Quebecers Mr. and Ms. Ménard and Mr. Bergeron. Both of their families are extremely concerned. They've received contradictory information, and all they want is for their loved ones to be back in Canada as soon as possible. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious situation that merits clear, specific answers. But the problem is that the government is barely moving on this issue. Can we finally know what is the plan to deal with these 43 Canadians affected by the virus in Japan? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, we continue to work to ensure that Canadians are repatriated. We understand the concerns of the Canadians abroad and their families. Our consular officers are in constant contact with them, including Mr. and Ms. Ménard. Once again, I would like to thank them for their important work. We will continue to provide consular services to all Canadians on site. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Richmond Athabasca. Well, other countries have repatriated their citizens, but some of ours are still over there. We now know that another case of COVID-19 was detected in a woman on a different cruise ship, the MS Westerdam. The ship, which came back to port just today, had 1,455 passengers on board. This is highly problematic because most of those passengers have now returned to their respective countries on airplanes without anyone knowing if they posed a risk. Where are the 271 Canadians who were on board the ship, and what is their health status right now? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, ensuring the safety and security of Canadians abroad and at home is our top priority. We've been engaged in this issue since the very beginning. The Minister has spoken with his Japanese counterpart and international colleagues and with other allies regarding the safety and security of Canadians. He's also spoken directly with the families and CEO of the cruise ship company. Our chartered flight is now en route to Japan, and this again, I want to thank our tremendous consular services team, which is working night and day, literally all weekend, to ensure that Canadians have the right information. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
Mr. Speaker, our community was surprised to learn late Saturday night through social media that a coronavirus quarantine site would be established at the NAV Centre in Cornwall. The mayor and local officials were not advised. Local residents and employees who worked there were left in the dark for nearly 2 days with valid questions about the suitability of this building that has hundreds of general public going through it daily. The rollout of the site was a communications failure that was completely avoidable. Can the Minister explain why the people of Cornwall and local elected officials, including myself, were left in the dark on such a critical issue?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Very much, Mr. Speaker. The accommodations at CFB Trenton are currently at capacity because of the previous repatriation efforts. The NAV Centre was chosen because there are existing supports to coordinate processing and provide support services for all repatriated Canadians coming from Japan. It also has a facility available to house individuals in separate accommodations. These Canadians have been through a stressful experience over the past couple of weeks, and Mr. Speaker, I might want to say that the member was offered a meeting directly with the minister, and my understanding, to the best of my knowledge, was that the member turned that meeting down.
The Honourable Member for Stormont Dundas, South Glengarry.
To clarify to the member, the minister offered a meeting after the news was made late Saturday night through social media. A little bit too late. Thanks for the clarification. Mr. Speaker, to clarify, the NAV Centre is not a military base like CFB Trenton. It is one large building open to the public 24/7. While flood victims and asylum seekers have been hosted at the site before, they've never hosted a quarantine for a global health emergency. It is apples to oranges to compare to past practices when it comes to protocols, security, and safety for the employees and those who visit the site. Basic information should have been provided immediately, not days later. Or
the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I think it's important to know that before boarding the plane, passengers will be screened for symptoms. Remember, Mr. Speaker, and I remind the members on the other side.
That's right.
I just want to clarify. That when I mentioned earlier about one voice coming across, I didn't mention to everyone coordinate at once and have many voices at a lower level. That's not what I had in mind. I'll let the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary continue, please.
Mr. Speaker, I remind members on the other side that those who get on this plane are healthy Canadians. They've been screened multiple times. Those who exhibit symptoms of COVID-19 will not be permitted to board and will be transferred to the Japanese health system to receive appropriate care. Those who remain in Japan will continue to receive full consular services from the Government of Canada. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher Les Patriotes Verchères. Mr. Speaker, the railway blockade is having a real impact on Quebecers. We're on the verge of a serious propane shortage that could impact our farmers, hospitals, and long-term care homes. The price of food will go up for all families. Some Quebecers have already been laid off, and others talk of a chlorine shortage that could affect drinking water. The Port of Montreal is even turning away boats. Well, Mr. Speaker, this is called a crisis. Since the Minister of Transport doesn't seem to understand the gravity of the situation, will the Prime Minister finally take the lead and deal with this problem? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for his comments. I agree with him. The situation is serious, and we are very aware of the impacts that could be impacting Quebec and Canada. There's a shortage of various important products, and we know that there are a range of other products that are also affected, as well as passenger service. We're working on a solution, and we believe that the right way of doing that is through dialogue. That's what we're doing. The Honourable Member for Avignon, La Métis, Matane, Matapédia. Oh, sorry, the Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the government is discriminating in its discrimination. There's discrimination that's not right, which it calls out, and then there's discrimination which is correct in their view, and that's what they apply. So when it comes to EI, for example, one person has a right to 15 weeks because she had to leave her job for serious health reasons. But somebody who leaves their job because they lose the job can have the right to EI for up to 50 weeks. So that seems to be unacceptable discrimination. Will the Prime Minister face up to the situation and get rid of this unfair EI discrimination? I thank the member for his question. We all agree with Émilie Sans-Façon as she's shown remarkable courage. We've made a number of significant changes to the EI system over the last 4 years, and we will continue to improve the system. In our platform, we committed to changing the EI sickness benefit up to 26 weeks, and that's what we're going to do.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are moving the goalposts and dragging out their political decision on Tech Frontier and 10,000 Canadian jobs. The evidence and experts are clear. It is in Canada's public interest. It will reduce global emissions, and every single local Indigenous community supports it. One already promises legal action if the Liberals deny this opportunity. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is promoting oil and gas in Senegal while funding pipelines in Asia and giving grants to pipeline protesters in Canada. The reality is he emboldens activists shutting down Canada today. Why?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under the Canadian Environmental Assessment Act 2012, which is the law under which this project is being assessed, the legislative timeline for Cabinet to make a decision on this particular project is the end of February. As it can with any project, it can approve the project with conditions, it can reject the project, or it can extend the legislative timeline. We are certainly actively considering this project and all of the relevant information before we make an appropriate decision.
Hear, hear. Member for Lakeland.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the truth is Liberals are lobbying Liberals and pushing petitions to shut down the oil sands and to kill Canadian jobs. Liberal MPs selectively quote the Joint Panel Report. What they don't say is Tech Frontier, quote, is not expected to threaten the sustainability of local ecosystems or wildlife populations, and that rejecting Tech could result in, quote, exporting emissions to other jurisdictions with higher emissions intensity. The reality is Tech surpassed every measure, and last week the Finance Minister himself even said there's no barrier to a timely decision. So will the Liberals stop using Tech Frontier as a cynical bargaining chip and approve it on its merits?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of an environmental assessment is to actually go through the process, to have the effects identified. The Joint Review Panel actually found that there were significant negative adverse environmental impacts associated with the project. It now comes to Cabinet to have a conversation about whether or not those effects can be justified in the circumstances. There is a legislative timeline to make a decision by the end of February, and we will make a decision.
Well, member for West Nova.
Public Safety knows that Ralph Goodale issued a number of directives to the RCMP in the past. He simply has his facts wrong. And no one should be surprised by that when we see a government that has no plan to restore the rule of law, no plan to get our transportation networks moving again, and no plan to even get fuel to parts of our country. What is the Prime Minister doing to address the propane shortages in Quebec and in Nova Scotia that is showing or shutting down the layoffs or causing the layoffs of hundreds of employees?
Good question.
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, just for the members' edification, for the benefit of the members of this House, the Minister of Public Safety does have the authority to issue directions to the RCMP pursuant to the RCMP Act. However, this is circumscribed by two very important principles. First, the directions cannot, in effect, require the RCMP to disregard any of their lawful duties. And secondly, the directions cannot infringe on the independence of the RCMP regarding their law enforcement functions.
The Honourable Member for Northwest Territories.
Mr. Speaker, last September our government unveiled a new long-term and strategic vision for Canada's Arctic North with the release of the Arctic and Northern Policy Framework. Could the Minister of Northern Affairs comment on the co-development process of the framework and update the House on next steps? Thank you,
Minister of Northern Affairs.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank the member from Northwest Territories for his question and for his hard work on the North. The Arctic and Northern Policy Framework is historic because it was co-developed with provincial, with territorial, and with our Indigenous partners. Northerners have told us that they want Arctic people at the center of the framework, and we have listened. The framework takes an inclusive approach to the northern region and reflects the unique interests, priorities, and circumstances of its people. We are now moving from co-development to co-implementation, and together with our partners, we will work to implement a shared vision for a strong, a prosperous, and a sustainable Arctic.
The Honourable Member for Elgin Middlesex. London.
Global News is reporting that a refugee judge told a woman that her choice to keep a baby meant that she was never raped. The judge asked the victim during her interview, if you're raped, why would you keep a child of rape? The line of questioning taken by the government official is appalling and further traumatizes the victim. Can the Liberals confirm if this individual is still employed as a refugee judge? Thank you.
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, and I want to be absolutely clear. The comments as reported are completely unacceptable. The IRB has provided my offices with assurances that they are overhauling their complaints review process, and they are making sure that sensitivity training is mandatory for all of its members. These are two critical steps which will ensure that everyone gets a fair hearing that is absolutely free from all forms of discrimination, including gender bias. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Well, to be honest, I really hope that judge was fired. But carrying on, the Liberals must take immediate steps to stop IRB adjudicators from re-victimizing vulnerable claimants. They have seen several reports of mishandling of sexual and gender-based cases, including the demand for nude photos of a sex trafficking victim, another victim who was asked, why didn't he just kill her? This pattern of sexist remarks suggests IRB judges have no understanding of assault whatsoever. What is this government going to do to ensure the victims of sexual abuse and exploitation, and when are you going to do this?
I just want to remind the honourable members, when they place a question, to place it through the minister, not to the minister. Or sorry, through the speaker, not to the speaker. The honourable Minister of Immigration.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I understood the intent of my honourable colleague's question. As I said, these comments are completely unacceptable. The IRB has provided assurances to my office that they are overhauling the complaints process, that they are ensuring that mandatory training is being provided to all members so that we maintain the highest professional standards, and that every person that appears before the IRB gets a fair hearing that is free from all forms of bias, including gender discrimination. Thank you very much.
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, the House has spoken and the Auditor General has heard the message. The Liberals' $186 billion infrastructure plan will be scrutinized. This minority government loves to brag about being open and transparent at every opportunity. Can the Prime Minister assure parliamentarians that the Auditor General will have all the resources he needs to investigate the Liberal infrastructure fiasco? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my colleague for this excellent question. Two things. One, the Auditor General does have the resources necessary to do this important work. And two, we expect him to find what the Conservatives perhaps forgot, which was that over the last 4 years, 4 times more infrastructure projects in Canada were implemented and 6 times more in Quebec than compared to the 4 previous years.
Centre.
Mr. Speaker, in my riding of Kitchener Centre, the cost of living continues to increase for middle-class families. Families are asking that our government take more steps to make life more affordable. Can the Minister of Middle-Class Prosperity and Associate Minister of Finance please update the House on our government's plan to make life more affordable for middle-class Canadians? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Minister for Middle-Class Prosperity.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member from Kitchener Centre for his advocacy and hard work on behalf of his constituents. Mr. Speaker, in 2015, Canadians elected our government to strengthen the middle class, and as our first order of business, we lowered tax for middle-class families. In 2019, we once again lowered taxes for 20 million Canadians by increasing the basic personal amount. Once fully rolled out, this measure will put $600 back in the pockets of the average middle-class family each year. These tax cuts are in addition to investments our government has been introducing, the Canada Child Benefit.
The honourable member for Nunavut.
Mr. Speaker, in the summer of 2019, the minister came to Nunavut and apologized for the federal government's failure to provide, and I quote, proper housing, adequate medical care, education, and economic viability and jobs. Mr. Speaker, apologies without action mean nothing. How do Liberals think they can move forward on situations like we're seeing in the Wet'suwet'en territories along with Indigenous peoples if they refuse to back up their words with action, concrete action?
The Honourable Minister.
Our government is committed to working in partnership with territorial, provincial, and Indigenous partners to co-develop priorities for the North. Together, we've revised the Northern Nutrition North list of subsidized food and lowered the cost of the Northern food basket. We've signed an agreement in principle on the devolution of Crown lands and water rights in Nunavut, and we've launched the Arctic and Northern Policy Framework in September 2019. We will continue to work on solutions for the North, by the North.
Here, here.
The honourable member for Vancouver, Grenville.
Some 2 years ago, the Prime Minister stood in this House and committed to the recognition and implementation of Indigenous title and rights in legislation. That long overdue work has not happened, and we continue to see the challenges across the country due to that inaction. As was committed, and speaking of concrete action, will this government introduce legislation that upholds the minimum standards of UNDRIP, but equally important, actually implements its standards domestically so that Indigenous peoples are supported in their self-determination, can rebuild, and exercise their authority in clear and predictable ways for their own people and for all Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Justice.
Mr. Speaker, I was honoured to receive in my mandate letter from the Prime Minister the immediate priority of implementing UNDRIP into Canadian legislation. Mr. Speaker, we will be engaging with Canadians and working in partnership with Indigenous peoples to implement the Declaration as a framework for reconciliation.
C'est toutes les questions pour aujourd'hui.
That concludes the questions for today.
Or, if we can wait a moment before we go to the point of order, I'd like to draw the attention of the members, the presence in the gallery of Ms. Elin Jones, presiding officer of the National Assembly for Wales. And the honourable member for Stormont Dundas South Glengarry has a point of order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just want to elaborate a little bit further, and I'm going to ask the parliamentary secretary if he would withdraw his misleading statement to the House. For a government that's committed to doing politics differently and not taking cheap political shots, that was absolutely that today. I will state and ask him to withdraw his misleading statement about offered a briefing. I was not offered a briefing until a meeting that I had in the House of Commons, or rather in the parliamentary precinct yesterday, 48 hours after the issue became news. I'd ask that he would...
I'm afraid that falls into debate area.
Government orders, business of supply. Resuming debate on the opposition motion standing in the name of Mr. Blanchette on special employment insurance sickness benefits. The honourable member for Manicouagan. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to begin by letting you